let's start with your Lakers. Obviously, they get better, right? Unless you
Yes.
disagree with me. Okay.
No, I think they
Uh,
definitely. I think they got better, arguably more than any team in the league, or excuse me, any team in the division. But
So they add Marcus Smart, they add Jake
yep.
LaRavia, they add DeAndre Ayton. Gone, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jordan Goodwin, Shake Milton, Trey Jemison. And really, it's worth mentioning, full year of Luka Doncic, who
Yes.
also looks like he might be in the best shape of his career. I'm going to consider that like a fraction of an ad, but
Oh,
it might obviously be the
I
biggest
think it's
deal
more than
going.
a fraction.
Yeah.
I in the notes you let me know some of the things you'd be asking about when I was considering
Mm-hmm.
this. I said it might feel like a cheat to include full training camp with Luka, but it's not. It's a really
Mm-hmm.
big deal.
Yeah. So
I
you said
think
that they might be the best. They might have gotten better than any other team in the division, which is interesting because you look on paper. And the only reason I said it's a fraction of an ad is because he was literally on the roster last year. So I'm like looking on paper. Like you look at the Clippers, they added players. The Warriors
yes.
added players. The Lakers added a couple of guys, but the Luka thing is the big.
Well,
It's
but
the biggest factor.
they added three rotational players, and in
Mm-hmm.
particular, they added rotational players that directly addressed needs. Like the Lakers needed a starting caliber center, and whatever flaws you think DeAndre Ayton has, and I think a lot of the criticism he's taken over the years, I don't think it's all entirely fair, but I think some of it is. Regardless, he is a legit starting center. I don't think you can debate that otherwise. He fills a massive need for the Lakers. Marcus Smart,
Well,
assuming
can I stop you on Aiton? Because
sure.
I've heard you say this on Locked On Lakers, and it's a great point, right? It's you go from basically being having to play a two-way guy at the center position to now getting, and I agree with you, a bona fide, certified starting level center.
Yeah.
He's not gonna ever be the number one pick, DeAndre Ayton. We know that. That's gone. Ship sailed. Sorry,
But
never gonna happen.
here's
Doesn't
what's
have to be
important.
that for this team.
Thank you. That's the Suns' burden to bear and be bitter about that he was
Mm,
not worth the number one overall pick. The Lakers don't need that. They
mm-hmm.
need him to be a starting caliber center who can help them in much needed rebounding. He's never averaged less than 10 rebounds a game.
He's a good rebounder.
He's a very good offensive rebounder as well, so that
Mm-hmm.
can help get the Lakers better possessions. He is a good pick and roll partner, but also I think a decent pick and pop partner, like in
Mm-hmm.
that mid-range area. He is not a high-end defensive center, but I think he can be a better lane deterrent just through his overall physicality and size than Jackson Hayes was.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a little bit of quickness if you need him to switch a little bit in certain situations and stuff like that. But just he's a massive upgrade over Jackson Hayes, who is somewhere between a second to third string caliber center in the league and the two-way guys they were playing last year. Like
Yeah.
he represents something significant they did not have at all. And that's before you get to Marcus Smart, assuming he's healthy, addressing the perimeter defensive issues that I think are still there for this team, but he at least helps bring a dimension that wasn't there. And Jake LaRavia, I think, in certain respects, will replace some of what DFS did.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a connecting player. And
Mm-hmm.
I think contending teams need connecting players.
I want to go back to Ayton because I do think it's one of the more fascinating additions here. Because I agree with everything you said, and I think it's really well put where you say that he was the number one pick for Phoenix. It's been two teams since then, right? It's been Phoenix, it's been Portland, and now it's with the Lakers. And I know people kind of roll their eyes because, look, DeAndre Ayton stepped in it in the past, right? With the dominating stuff. I want to be a max guy. Now I'm always a max guy and all this stuff. He's definitely stepped in it. He's also really young. He was the number one pick. He has been a projected number one pick, by the way, his entire life. Like you look at his recruiting background and all that, like this guy was just like silver spoon in a lot of ways in terms of just athletic gifts. He has, I think, been humbled a little bit, and I actually really liked his media day quotes. And this is not from a guy. This is not. I am not a Lakers fan. I don't cover the team. I am an outsider completely. And I see those quotes, and I'm like, "Yep." And again, you can roll your eyes and say, "Oh, he's like now I'm playing for something that matters and all this stuff." And you're like, "Well, you were, on a championship team, and then you kind of shit the bed after that." Yes, he did. He was young,
but he did
I
play.
think
But he was a big part of that team going to the finals. Like,
he was.
And then, it's
absolutely.
been pretty well documented that he was entering a contract year and the Suns had told him, do these things that aren't necessarily number one overall, statsy type things, some of the proverbial little things, some of the dirty work, and you will get paid. He did all that stuff in the finals run. And then they said, well, if you can find a contract, we'll match it. And I'm not saying that there isn't an onus on Ayton to be a professional, even in that situation. Of course there is. Like, he has to own accountability, but that can be disillusioning for, somebody who's in his early 20s. But also, I think if we're all being honest, in our jobs, whatever we do, if you are told to do certain things that aren't necessarily glamorous, that feel like sacrifice, and there will be a reward for doing it, and you do it, and your bosses turn around and say, well, we're not going to actually give you the rewards that we promised, that's going to piss you off in your job. It will.
So yeah, and then he goes to, I love Portland as a city. So
It's a great city.
I think it's a great city. Basketball players tend to not feel the same way. It's a little bit of sort of, oh, now we're in the Pacific Northwest. We're kind of stranded out here. He goes from Phoenix, which is a place that NBA players tend to like very much, to a little bit of a basketball Siberia in Portland on a losing situation. And then they draft his replacement. I can understand why he'd be like, not totally psyched about it here. I'm willing to give up money if it means I get to go to Los Angeles and play for an organization like the Lakers alongside, by the way, Luka Doncic and LeBron James. I've also seen this point here, and maybe, look, I might be way too bullish on DeAndre Ayton. I fully admit it. I might have fallen in love with the finals run and all this stuff.
For what it's worth, I'm pretty bullish on what he's going to do this season too.
So then there is nobody here to balance us. There is no checks and balances here. So let's just roll. Let's roll with it. But I've seen a lot of people say, well, you want him to be a rim running center because that's what works with Luka. DeAndre Ayton isn't really that. He likes to play in the mid range and kind of hit those those jumpers and well, yeah, he has. He's also never played with a guy quite like Luka. Even Chris Paul, who is as great of a pick and roll creator as there is, he doesn't look for the lob quite as much as Luka looks for the, not at that stage in Chris Paul's career. Like with DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin, it was a little bit different. Last time I checked, I don't know that there were players that didn't love points. And if Luka is going to be spoon feeding DeAndre Ayton points and he has to get him easier at the basket as opposed to settling for 13, 14, 15-foot jumpers, something tells me he'll be okay with it if it means he's getting the easiest 15 points of his career per game.
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. If you believe all the knocks on DeAndre Ayton, that he's low motor, doesn't necessarily care, doesn't want to take the hardest route possible, then it stands to reason that he's going to love being spoon-fed around the rim. Like, you can't have this both ways.
Right. Let's talk about Marcus Smart. Again, fascinating here. Lower on the Marcus Smart edition than I am the DeAndre Ayton edition. Two reasons why. I know J.J. Redick told him, hey, if you could be Celtics Marcus Smart, then you're exactly what we need. And Marcus Smart is saying, like, I could definitely do that because I am Celtics Marcus Smart. I don't think he is anymore. It's been 2 years now where I haven't seen it. It's really hard to get that kind of thing back. You don't typically see players like Marcus Smart at this stage of his career kind of hit the reset button and go back to something. Now, everything we've heard is that his conditioning is better and things like that. I think he can be better than what he was in Memphis, which would just require being on the court and healthy. I think he could be better than what he was down the stretch of last year with Washington, with playing for a losing team that wasn't really doing anything. But for Marcus Smart deserves a ton of credit for that Wizards. He tried for that Wizards team. Like, he was actually out there playing basketball. But in terms of being the perimeter defender, I don't know that that's there anymore for him. Even Memphis and Washington kind of used him more as an off-ball wing defender. And if that's what he's doing with the Lakers, I think that's fine. I think, like, obviously they would still have a glaring need at point of attack, and maybe he has to step into that spot anyway. But if he's guarding wings, I think he's very capable of doing that. I'm just a little hesitant to be like, yeah, they solved their point of attack defense issues with Marcus Smart. A, because he's just older. B, played, 50 combined games over the last 2 years. I have questions about his health overall and if he's even going to be available. But I do think it'll be overall a net positive, if anything, because they need somebody to take ownership of the defense that isn't JJ Redick. Like, they need a player. And we know one thing about Marcus Smart is he's going to hold teammates accountable. He's going to be communicating on the court. He's going to be connecting stuff. I think that might be where his value is more to this defense than locking up Steph Curry in a basketball game.
It's interesting you say that because in some respects, I think that's one of the more direct areas where Marcus Smart is replacing Dorian Finney-Smith. Like Dorian Finney-Smith came into the Lakers locker room midseason last year, and his voice immediately mattered, which is something very consistent with DFS's career. I imagine that once he is healthy for Houston, unfortunately, it was just announced that he's going to be missing the beginning of the season, recovering from off-season ankle surgery. I imagine DFS's voice will matter in that locker room. And by the way, they need a voice, particularly with Fred VanVleet out for the season. And he was one of the most important voices. And for all the things Kevin Durant does extremely well, I don't think that is particularly high on the list. So they're going to need someone. I think DFS will be helpful there. I agree Marcus Smart will be helpful along those lines as well. As far as what he does on the court, I agree with you. Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart, feels like a tall ask. You mentioned the recent string of injuries. He is already dealing with some Achilles tendinopathy. That was just announced when training camp began. Marcus Smart has not been, unless as of this recording things change, but I doubt it will. He has not been fully engaged in practices, full participant, any stuff like that. I think his availability for the season opener, I'm not going to say that it's in jeopardy yet just because it's too early and I don't know enough information, but I don't think it's also a given that he'll be there either. They need him, though, to help improve the perimeter defense, if not solve the problem. Like, I agree with you. Solving the perimeter defense, solving the point of attack defense, that feels like a bit premature. First of all, it's too much to put on one guy anyway. Frankly, I think Jared Vanderbilt, his health and availability, which on the plus side has seemed terrific so far in training camp. The second day of practice for the Lakers was basically J.J. Redick and various players taking turns praising how good Vando looks. I think in some respects, Vando may play a larger role in that than Smart, but the two of them together and healthy and available, that's what's going to, if not solve it, significantly offset the issues the Lakers had last year. But just bringing in somebody like Smart, who is an improvement over what they had, and if nothing else, can prevent as many opportunities of Austin Reeves having to do this on top of his offensive responsibilities, or like we saw a lot last year, putting Rui Hachimura in a situation where he has to check guards because there's nobody else to do it. And as much as Rui tried, like, that's not really a fair ask of him. So just having Marcus Smart there to do some of that, even if he can't do it at peak Marcus Smart level, it's an upgrade from what was there before.
Surprisingly, at least I was surprised by it. I think J.J. Redick might be best at coaching defense. And you would think maybe it would have been the opposite for J.J. Redick, who was not a good defensive player by any stretch. And that was probably just more athletic limitations. But obviously everybody knows three-point shooting offensively. He talked a lot about offense, during his broadcast career. I know that there's some debate about the Lakers defense in the second half of last year and how real it was versus not. And it did slip towards the end after being like whatever it was in number 1, number 2 in defensive rating for like a month and a half or whatever. I don't care very much about the numbers where they ranked for that stretch. I know that there's some shooting luck and stuff like that. Were they leaving the right players open? Were they just missing shots? All this stuff. We can do the stats. We could dive into them. I've definitely talked about it. People have written about it. People have talked about it. Here's where I come down on it. I'm more, again, bullish about the Lakers defense because I saw the buy-in from the players in the system that Redick had. And as long as that buy-in stays, there's enough length that can overcome some of the concerns that I have with point of attack defense. Like if you get by him, okay, there's big arms of Rui Hachimura, DeAndre Ayton, LeBron James, Luka Doncic. Like all these guys are there. Their lineup is pretty big, right? Like the only small guy is going to be Austin Reeves and then maybe Marcus Smart if he ends up starting over Rui. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to be an amazing defense. They're not going to be one of the top 5 defenses in the league. I think they can at least do enough to get to be average. And then if you've got Luka, LeBron, Rui, even Reeves has shown flashes of like really cranking it up defensively in crucial moments at end of games. If you can kind of just get a couple of stops at the end, I think the formula looks a little bit like what Denver's formula was in 2023.
Yeah, it's interesting. As far as the idea of the buy-in, I think you really hit on something important, in particular, the buy-in from LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Like more than the addition of Dorian Finney-Smith or schemes or Jordan Goodwin. Actually, I thought played kind of an overlooked.
I kind of wish he came back.
So I don't kind of wish he was back. I wish he was back.
Can you explain why they had to let him go to make room for Marcus Smart? Because I would have loved to have Goodwin there with Marcus Smart.
In order to get the full, I believe, biannual exception.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, it's cap stuff. I think in a perfect world, they would have preferred to keep Jordan Goodwin. He's the guy that had the non fully guaranteed contract without getting super into the weeds, cap stuff. But I think in a perfect world, they would have liked to have kept him. I think JJ should have played Jordan Goodwin. I said this a lot on Locked On Lakers and on Lakers Talk, my weekly Lakers show for ESPN LA, 710 in Los Angeles. I think JJ could have and should have played Goodwin more in the playoffs. I think his presence helped that defensive surge they had. But more than anything, LeBron's buy-in. And I think LeBron committing to that end of the floor, it helps just because when LeBron wants to, he can still be a very effective defender, but also it creates an entire team-wide accountability, because if the old man's out there busting his ass defensively, there's no excuse for anybody else not to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to do it. In the same way that I think Luka's commitment this offseason to conditioning and fitness, and seems like so far at least more accountability defensively, it creates, I think, an entire team-wide excitement and like a let's effing go from everybody. Like, just you see that, but also, and it excites you, but also there's oh, wow, I need to step up what I'm doing, because if Luka spent his entire offseason transforming his body in, anticipation of stepping up his own game, I got to match that. Players take cues from their leaders. I don't think the defense during that period was fake or all smoke and mirrors, because they did it repeatedly over, game after game after game. At some point that has to be real. I think the problem is just not sustainable. Like, right. It's so exhausting and taxing to essentially be doing all that to offset specifically lack of rim protection. I'm hopeful that DeAndre Ayton being there just prevents them from having to play that level of balls to the walls, flying all over the place for 82 games. Like, and Luka maybe being more mobile, Vanderbilt being healthy, I think would help a lot along these lines. It's just too taxing over 82 games, much less 82 games and however long they're in the playoffs.
We've hit it a number of times, but there's so many reasons why DeAndre Ayton is one of the best, most 5 interesting players in the league this year. I mean, it's so important. He's such a hinge piece for them. I don't want to spend a ton of time on the LeBron load management stuff, but this was sort of the headline coming out of training camp at the Lakers is, they're ramping him up slowly, age, 23rd season, all this stuff. The reason I don't want to spend a ton of time on it is because we really don't know what this looks like. It's brand new. I will like, LeBron is very famous for saying, I'm going to slow it down, I'm going to take a load off, and then not. So eventually it feels like he has to eventually kind of slow down at some, and he obviously already is in some respects, but it's just something that's out there. I thought we kind of had to mention it, but I don't want to overreact to it, because we just don't know what it's going to look like, unless you disagree. Maybe you think it's a little bit more material. No,
I mean, we don't know. I mean, they're ramping him up during training camp, and he's got this nerve irritation in the glute area that they're obviously going to be careful about. And there's a certain amount of caution that would be exercised during training camp under any circumstances, just because all the reasons that were mentioned before. LeBron does not like to load management. He does not like to take games off. I think he looks and there's positives and negatives to this. I think he looks to often find rest within the game when he can. I think the best way for the Lakers to load manage LeBron is play as well as they can and as focused and purposeful as they can for 3 quarters, create big leads, and then give LeBron rest in the 4th quarter. Like, I think that's actually the most practical way to try to get him, if you want to call it load managed throughout a season, because the truth is the West is too competitive. Like, they do not have the luxury of truly load managing LeBron in a, Greg Popovich DNP old type way.
Right. But could they do it in a Greg Popovichian way of Tim Duncan doesn't play more than 30 minutes a night during the regular season?
I think they'd love to do that if they could.
Right.
I think that will be difficult to do with the second best player on your team. Like, just look around the league, and other than maybe the Thunder, I don't know of a team that can get by playing their second best player 30-ish minutes a night as a cap and still maintain the pace that you need in the West. It's just really difficult.
And exactly. And that's why I'm going to wait and see what this actually looks like before we have what this means.
I'll say this. If it becomes a thing that has to happen, I think it dramatically impacts the Lakers' ceiling for this season. It's a problem.
Well said.